The machine learning, data, AI, and analytics ecosystem has been flourishing. There are over 2,000 companies that evolve in this space. Last year, there were 1,416 companies in this landscape. So if you look at this year, that's a 41% year-over-year growth. 41% more companies were found in this space over the last 12 months. So 2,000 companies this year, 1,400 companies last year. Just to give you a sense, 10 years ago, there were 139 companies in this space. So in 10 years, the space has grown by way, way more than 10 times. Now, how do I know all of this? Well, that's because I've been spending some time with my good friend, Matt Turck. He's managing director at FirstMark. He's also a part-time historian of the machine learning, AI, and data landscape, and as it's referred, the MAD landscape. So in today's CarCast, we're going to dive into some of these themes and patterns that Matt has picked, looking at all these companies. He's got 24 themes. We're not going to cover all 24 themes. You got to check out his blog for that, which I'm going to put the link to down here. We're going to pick a few today. Matt, thank you so much for spending time with us today. We had a ton of fun doing this last year, so I'm excited to do this with you this year again.
Thanks for having me, and thanks for the great intro.
Well, thank you. And then, of course, you don't have the glasses because I didn't send you the glasses, but I want to make sure you know I have glasses for you. And last year we joked about both of us being French. You notice I don't have a French shirt this time, although I kind of always have a French shirt with me. All right, so before we get going, Matt, first to the audience, I want to thank all of you that came to the Vidaiku Everyday AI Summit in San Francisco this past week. Florian, the CEO of Vidaiku, and I had a ton of fun on stage and off stage. Vidaiku happens to be also an investment that Matt did. Their next Everyday AI Summit is in New York on April 25th, where Matt lives, and he's also going to be part of the event. So I hope that if you're listening to us and you want to continue the conversation with Matt, you take the opportunity of going to the event and then going to his session and panel. The second point I want to make sure is that you all understand here, everything we're going to talk about today is our opinion and our opinion only. It's not the opinion of our employers. The CarCast, as I often mention, is not sponsored by anyone. This is something we do on our free time. So remember that. And of course, none of this is investment advice. All right, now that I've gotten this out of the way, one last thing, if you like this CarCast, best way to support it is subscribe, comment, like, share. Like the kids say, smash the like and subscribe button to help us kind of spread the word as we work in data, AI, and analytics. All right, Matt, you and I have been in communication about this MAD landscape since the beginning of the year. We're now in April, almost the end of April. So why has it been particularly hard this year to release the MAD landscape?
Well, it's been a big year, right? You mentioned by how many companies the overall market size had increased in the landscape. Keep in mind that this is actually not all the companies in the space, but our best effort at selecting a representative sample of companies. So it's a big thing for us. We try to be very systematic and intentional in how we put the landscape every year, and because over the years, in our little industry, it's become something that people look at. We do feel a lot of responsibility to be very careful about how we do things. But this year being the year of generative AI and the year, a year where we've seen a massive amount of company creation and company funding. We had this big influx of new companies, and we needed to decide which one to include or not include, and then in which categories, and then whether there were new categories we needed to add.
And you have 24 themes that you frame in the forms of questions. I love the question framework, because as we both are French, I feel like I need to bring up the French philosopher Voltaire, who used to say, judge a person by the quality of their questions, not just the quality of their answers. So last year, you asked this fundamental question: the modern data stack is under pressure. This year, you have a more drastic question. You ask, is the modern data stack dead? So that's definitely not the right direction if you're a player in this space. That's not the question you want to hear. But I want to double click under that. Why are you saying that? What makes you ask that question this year?
Yeah, so look, just to rewind, as probably most people that will listen to this know, the modern data stack is really this concept an alliance of vendors and a suite of products around the data warehouse. So really this idea of extracting data from a bunch of different sources or the SaaS databases and then pushing them into a data warehouse for analytics purposes, and then analyzing this largely using BI and dashboards. And there was a tremendous amount of excitement around it, particularly around Snowflake, and before the Snowflake IPO, and even more so after the Snowflake IPO. Tons of new companies, vendors, tons of VC money that went into this. You end up with a situation where you have just entire categories that are completely overcrowded. In a context where the overall action has moved away a little bit from that entire world, and a context where a lot of buyers, a lot of customers have had pretty dramatic budget cuts on their end. So there's a lot of those things happening, the overcrowding, the budget cuts, and then the action moving away. So on that point, what do I mean? I just simply mean that the world of the modern data stack has been the world of structured data analysis, typically. So, the data that you put into rows and columns, and I'm caricaturing a bit, it's a little more nuanced than that. With all the excitement around generative AI, you need a different type of technology. So what you feed into generative AI models tends to be unstructured data. So the data that doesn't fit into the rows and columns, and that's going to be your text, your images, your videos. And for that, you need a different kind of technologies, and you see a new stack appearing around those technologies. So the big question for all the companies that are in and around the modern data stack is whether they can extend to be part of that modern AI stack as well. And you see a lot of companies trying to do that with varying levels of success.
Yeah, so there's the challenge from the customer standpoint, identifying what's the right solution. And then the LLM, buzz has really brought this front and center with this, understanding from customers that it might be a different stack that you need to build, because now you're dealing with completely different set of data and maybe different expectations as well. Who's interacting with that data?
Yeah.
The
business
and
you do different things, right? So it's probably pretty clear for anybody that's in the data world, but like it's somewhat amazing, somewhat surprising, I guess, to which extent as soon as you're like just like one hop away from the kind of like data engineering and data science world, like people don't are confused about where what fits where, which is partly what I'm trying to do with this exercise. But fundamentally, the world of structured data and business intelligence, which is about analyzing the present and the past, and then the world of machine learning, data science, and now generative AI, which is in the enterprise, the world of predictive analytics, which is about identifying patterns and trying to basically predict the future. So the future could be this type of customer has churned in the past, therefore if I look at my current list of customers, which one are the most likely to churn based on that pattern, which is like one of the ways it's done, or predict what the next word should be, which is like the generative AI use case, like based on all this data that has been fed into the model during training, predict the next pixel, the next word, to generate something.
So let's talk more about that, because of course we cannot not talk about AI and Gen AI. In your blog,
Yes.
you tackle this topic across a few important questions. I think there's 4 that really popped for me. The first one is, where are we on the AI hype cycle? Difference between experiments and reality. Was 2023 a head fake? Is traditional AI dead? That's a big question. And then I think looking forward, will 2024 be the year of AI in the enterprise? Bill Gates once said, we always overestimate the change that will occur in the next 2 years, and we underestimate the change that will occur over the next 10 years. What do you think we're dealing with here with AI? Is this a cyclical or is this structural? And how long will it take for us to see value in this space?
Yeah, so it's very much structural, and it's been happening for a number of years now. So there's one thing that this continued effort around creating a mad data landscape every year shows is that you take the if you make the effort of like truly looking into the space, none of this is necessarily super new as much as it is a continuum of a bunch of different things. So generative AI is, based on transformers, which is a form of deep learning, which has been, something that has been built over decades and really started exploiting in 2012. All of this is becoming possible because we have massive amounts of digitalized data that we can extract, transform, prepare for purposes of AI. So all of this is not just structural. For me, it's the mega trend of all mega trends, and that's been in the making for years, and we still have years and decades before this truly plays out in terms of just like creating massive value in the economy. Not that it hasn't so far, but I think we're still in the early part of the exponential curve there.
And I think it's very true that practitioners see in the market is you make this case in the blog, which is this is not an overnight success. This happened as a set of events that kind of bring us to the perfect storm now. But we also know that realization of value, just like it did for the internet, by the way, might take a decade before everyone starts adopting that.
Yeah. Although very much so. Although the cloud, right? Like it's sort of hilarious when you talk to large companies that you find yourself having conversations about, okay, well, this year is the year we're moving to the cloud, in earnest, and it's like 2024, and you're like scratch your head, it's like I thought that was like that sounded like a 2008 blog post, and this is like 2024, and people actually do it. So those things take a long time, for sure. And then, to your question about like, are we going to, get value in 2024 from AI? That's a little bit the discussion around traditional AI. We've actually have been having, getting value from AI in, for many years, but that was mostly traditional AI. Not generative AI. So generative AI, everybody has gotten crazy about it because it's like the new kid on the block, and it's very viscerally easy to relate to because it's AI talking to you in a language that you know. But AI in the enterprise is not a new thing. It's been around for a number of years, and this, AI everywhere. And it's kind of behind the scenes. People don't always realize it, but it's been around for a while. So traditional AI, to our conversation about unstructured versus structured data, has been mostly focused on that kind of like structured / tabular kind of data. The churn prediction example I was giving you is a little bit like that. It's an example of traditional AI, but all of this exists very much around the world. So it's not that we are going to start getting value from AI. It's like we have been getting value from AI. And for generative AI in particular, yes, we are in the early innings, but it's part of that broad continuum that I mentioned several times now.
Now, connected to value is often the question of cost. I spend a lot of time with customers and practitioners, and there is this question around, well, first of all, where does the budget come from? Do I take it from traditional AI over to Gen AI? And how much should I plan? There's research from McKinsey, I think, that gives us a range from 1 million to 200 million, depending if you're a shaper, a maker. And you do ask that question. You said, how much does AI actually cost? Tell us more about that.
Yeah, so for generative AI specifically, we don't really know just yet. I mean, we have an idea about the top of the range because clearly the big trend is towards generative AI becoming cheaper, not more expensive, at least in the short term. So that's a little bit of a giant experiment in the making, and that's why I asked the question in the first place, is because like nobody really knows. So look, the inference cost, which is really what happens when you sort of like pull on a model to like give you an answer, seems to be going down pretty quickly. But that's something that's in progress and happening. You could argue that the inference cost for now is actually largely subsidized by VCs. meaning that the cost to the vendors, or like to the OpenAI or to the Anthropics of producing that output is actually pretty high. But all those companies are in that early phase of market conquest, where they need to become the vendor of choice for a bunch of different customers, and they're burning a large amount of venture money. Not too dissimilarly from Uber in the early days, where we all got all those cheap rides because largely they were operating either at a loss or at not very much a profit on a per ride basis. But the money to keep Uber afloat was provided largely by never-ending sort of rounds of funding into this company. So it's not too dissimilar. But the hope is by the time all of this normalizes, the cost to the vendors of making those models work, not necessarily just the training, but also the inference, will be much lower. So I think this entire industry is basically operating on the premise that things may be expensive for now, whether the cost is borne by the customer or by the vendor, but that ultimately the cost is going to go down. So that's a big hypothesis. It feels realistic based on what's happening, but it's a big if. To your question about the budget, I think what's really happening so far is that a lot of the budgets have been innovation budgets, which is what those budgets are for. So that's not that's a feature, not a bug. When a new class of vendor happens and enterprises want to be experimental, a lot of that money is going to come out of those innovation budgets. The key thing that needs to happen this year, and I think it's well on its way, is for the budget to be OPEX kind of budgets. So actual operational budgets, production budgets to bring those technologies very much in the heart of the enterprise, as opposed to just as an experimental proof of concept.
Yeah, and I think we've seen this with other technology waves where as you're learning, you have to create an environment where people can engage and there's unpredictability of the cost. I think maybe the surprising aspect of this one is the scale of how unpredictable it can be, because Gen AI is creating this incredible opportunity for data teams to engage the business users at the scale they couldn't do before. And so there's a little bit of that. Now, there's of course assumptions that customers make, and you talked about it, and around training and inference and the cost of inference in particular. But the other assumption people make is that we talk a lot about context window size, right? So more data is more better is the best way to summarize it. But you offer a perspective on SLMs, small language models, as opposed to LLMs, large language models. What do you think is going on here?
Yeah, look, I think that as we collectively learn as a space, we all becoming more sort of sophisticated in terms of understanding how we're going to use all the things, right? How we're going to put them together. I think the default assumption early on was that OpenAI was going to be the large language model that was going to do all the things for everyone. And I think we all realizing that one, vendor dependency is a problem. Two, cost is very much unknown. And three, if you're trying to do something very precise around capital markets, finance, the fact that the LLM can speak Polish, as a random example, is not going to help you much. So there's been this evolution towards lighter, cheaper, but actually not necessarily underperforming comparatively models, which are smaller in size, more precise, can be vertical specific, can be industry specific. And I think all of this is going to evolve towards just hybrid architectures, where we're going to use large language model to do certain things. We're going to use small language models to do other things. By the way, it's a very vibrant space. There's a lot of things emerging. There's this concept of state-space models that people are starting to talk about quite a bit. But if you put yourself, fast forward a year or two, I think in the enterprise, you're going to end up with these architectures where, as a user, you may be putting in a query. The query will go through a large language model, which will be able to understand the context of what it is that you're saying. And then there'll be a router that will put that query or direct that query towards different types of models, maybe another large language model, maybe a small model, maybe a vertical specific model, maybe a generative AI model, maybe a traditional AI model. But all of this will be organized and architected in a way that maximizes performance, reduces latency, and reduces cost. So I think it's going to be very exciting to watch how that works. But I don't believe for a second personally that you're going to have like one vendor that becomes all things AI, as much as the OpenAI of the world, for all the right reasons from that perspective, would want it.
And I think that's the insight here, right? As we're starting at the very beginning of the industry, we have to go wide and large because we don't know what we don't know. And as people are learning the specificity of their models and specifically where they're going to drive value, of course, they have the ability of being more specific in the type of data they're going after, the type of use case, the type of model, and so forth. Matt, you and I could stay here forever and talk about this for hours. We have in the past, but I'm going to put the link down here to the landscape and, of course, the blog. Everybody should go check that out. Again, if you're in New York for the Everyday AI Summit, you should go and check it out, meet Matt in person. I hope you found this CarCast useful. If you do, let us know in comments. Share it with your friends, subscribe to the CarCast YouTube channel, and let us know what you think. And with all of that, I will see you next week.
Hey.
Allez, ça marche. Can you hear me?
Ouais.
Okay. All right. On va y arriver. Donc, on va le faire très rapidement, ne t'inquiète pas. Ah, tu es parti là. Tu n'es plus là. Si, maintenant tu es là.
No.
Ça roule, c'est bon pour toi?
Okay, super great. Excited.
All right, let's do it. 3, 2, 1.